Good afternoon. Welcome to our podcast of Internet of Things and Security at the Edge. My name is Mondo Mikhail. I am your moderator. And with me today, I'm very pleased to have Alex Iuorio. He is the Senior Vice President at Avnet for Global Supplier Development. Alex has 40 years of industry experience in the technology distribution area. And Alex, I'm so happy to have you with me today.
Mondo, I'm very pleased to be here. Thank you.
You know, I was going through your bio. It's really, really interesting, but something really caught my eye. You have a degree from the University of Illinois, and your areas of concentration were mathematics, economics, and political science. That really caught my eye. Well, why did you choose to concentrate on those three items?
Well, the university offered a program which was actually called Field of Concentration, and you could pick three. It was experimental at the beginning of the 80s. You know, always been a math guy, but certainly thought that economics, would bring me closer to the real world, and political science would help me deal with the people within it. So it was no more complicated than that.
All right. I was fascinated because my background's in applied physics as well, and when I saw mathematics and economics and poli-sci, I was really quite curious about that. Thank you.
Well, thanks.
Anyhow, today we're here to talk about IoT, the Internet of Things, and specifically the security aspects or the vulnerabilities of the IoT infrastructure and Avnet's solution for that. So I think for me, what I always like to know is like the foundational type of material. You and I have been in technology for quite a while. I think we have a much deeper understanding of IoT. But most people, when I talk to friends and family members and so forth, and they say, "Wow, IoT, my smart device or my smart thermostat. I've got a treadmill with these exercise programs that go on it." Help our listeners understand really what IoT is and how deep it reaches.
It is really amazing when you think about it, right? It wasn't too long ago that, everybody was buzzing about IoT, but nobody knew what it was, right? And I think today, after we've gone through that period of time trying to identify it, I think it's become rather simple. It's the, communication and connectivity mechanisms that permeate not only our industry, but our world, right? This conversation really started based on an article that we penned in 2017 about device connectivity at the edge, and really spoke a little bit there about, what the security elements will be required over time as the technique, if you will, becomes pervasive across our entire industry. But when you think about it in its basic context, right? IoT is not really complicated. You have sensing or actuating on one end. Today you may have some sort of a processing technology to make decisions on data that device collects, to limit latency and give immediate returns. There may be need for the data to go from that sensor and actuator through some sort of communication chip implementation to ultimately get it to a gateway or to the middleware that will take it to the cloud. And then from the cloud, it gets into big iron or huge data centers where the vast amount of information that can be, that is collected in today's world, can be organized in such a fashion that real business value, can be drawn from the data that's collected. So I think the simple answer to the question, Mondo, is it's the world we live in. IoT is connectivity. And whether you look at it as an industrial implementation, what people today are calling industrial IoT, or you look at it as your smartwatch connected to the cloud, or your refrigerator connected to the cloud for that matter, what we're really talking about IoT is the connected ecosystem. When we penned that article in 17, the theories were that there would be 50 billion connections by 2025. I think we're still easily on that path and then some. But that would be, the simple definition of IoT.
Yeah, that's really 50 billion is a number that a lot of people just can't get their mind around, that there's these devices proliferating our world really and generating this amount of data. What I found interesting too is, and I like to think about these aspects of it, is IoT for smart factory, let's say smart asset monitoring, smart facility monitoring, greenhouses, generator monitoring. These are all really interesting aspects of IoT devices. And, being in the embedded computing industry, I've watched throughout my 30 plus year career how semiconductors and how chips and electrical components have gotten so much smaller over time. Before, to have a computing device or anything that was on a network, it was really quite elaborate to build, highly expensive, and consume massive amounts of information. Now these little sensors can fit on the tip of your finger and generate data and be completely wirelessly connected. How do they work in these types of vertical markets, the smart factory, asset monitoring, facility monitoring, and so forth?
Well, you made me think back to the University of Illinois, where you're talking about how small, componentry has become. It made me think that our computer on campus was called Play-Doh, and it was a building. It was a building. That's how how big the compute power was, the equivalent you have in your hand day to day. Those are some of the applications, if you will, the segments that, will certainly benefit from IoT and complete connectivity applications. But there's no reason to stop there. I mean, you can see it in power and energy. You can see it in, retail and logistics, obviously in smart city as we manage our finite power and water resources. Or in transportation, optimal loads and continued communication, with the host device. I think the applications are absolutely limitless if we think in terms of the optimization, the efficiency that connectivity provides.
Yeah, lately I've been watching the news and hearing quite a bit of information about power grids going down, water systems being going down for a short while. We had an incident recently where air traffic control systems went down. They said it was a software bug or a file that was injected erroneously. I can see that security is going to be a huge issue. I mean, these are critical infrastructures. And when you have these IoT devices, whether in the water system, the power grid and so forth, it really becomes a matter of, I don't want to say life or death, but it becomes a matter of almost national security that these installations be protected. What's being done about that?
Well, by the way, great question, because it is the trade-off between complete connectivity and then protecting those connections, if you will. We can talk about it in an IT world. In an IT world, we're basically, managing information. Certainly we end up with hacks and we have to respond to those. But when you start talking about operational technology, when you talk about the power grid and water systems and so forth, maybe you are right in terms of the life and death type application of those services, if you will, and how significantly security is going to be required. I referred to that article that we've looked at a couple of times since 2017, and I'm happy to report now 5 years later that we seem to have the right idea at the time. And the idea at the time was, if you think of security as a fence that you build around your critical operations, you're part of the way there. We have to think of security down to the individual device level, right? If we're going to, run our most critical operations on connected installations. That's why we at Avnet have gone a long way to partner both with the two major cloud providers, that being Microsoft Azure and AWS, as well as a number of our component suppliers, individual device manufacturers, where we have now characterized literally thousands of devices to work on our IoT Connect platform, which is a middleware gateway, product that will ensure that security down to the device level. But that's where it has to reside. And stagnant security is really, not the order of the day. You have to be able to take those installations down to, dynamic device security, certificate management, right? The continual renewal of that product, so we make sure that the security, for lack of a better term, is bulletproof.
That's really fascinating. Now, a lot of people, like you use the fence example for security, a lot of people want to keep this data locked up tightly. But I imagine to make sure the data is safe, all these devices that come online, provisioning them automatically so they start gathering data and you really begin to gather intelligence from them. Seems to me that it would be very difficult to do this in an IT setting for individual companies, installations, wherever these deployments are. What is the advantage to doing that in the web? What value does that bring to an organization to offload that critical infrastructure management to a web?
Well, I think that there are a few inherent advantages of being to offload, those types of workloads to the web. But I think I would start there, Mondo, and say, what does it take to do it on your own, right? When you start thinking about, enabling a device suite, right, active device management across your enterprise, you're talking about having to develop your own modules and integrate those with whoever your cloud provider is. You're talking about, developing multi-tenant device management because you're dealing with a non-standard deployment. You have to develop your devices so that you can inject data, so you can store, you can analyze, and the list goes on and on. But the typical time to market, if an OEM decides to embark on this journey on their own, is going to be 8 to 12 months. As opposed to, and I've referenced it a couple of times, we've been in development first with Microsoft and now with Amazon Web Services in characterizing not only our gateway, our middleware, our IoT Connect product to be able to work with both clouds, but then on the other side, as I mentioned, to be able to certify devices so that we cut out all that work. Certainly there'll be some specification, some customization, but the vast majority of what customers will need to enable a device management installation is provided by our product and the suppliers that we represent. So now you're thinking about things like, device lifecycle management or overall data management or OT or even getting into how you transmit. Is it, C to D or D to C or B to B that we all know? If you can find a provider that has already, configured to be able to hit the vast majority of what your objective is, you could be talking about a timeline of 4 to 8 weeks as opposed to the 8 to 12 months.
Oh, yeah, so that there really is an advantage to offloading that to a web type of infrastructure. Yeah, that's I bet a lot of people don't really think about that. Tell me about the data itself. Part of your services, what type of analytics or what type of value can you extract or help an organization extract from that data?
It's really you name it. Okay. And we're not new to the idea of IoT implementation. We've been investing significantly for the last decade. And as I mentioned earlier, first with Microsoft and then later with Amazon Web Services. But during that time, we also acquired two major software entities. One called Witekio, which really made their bones in our business by writing BSP type packages for the component suppliers. So a well-known entity to processing suppliers, many of which are on our line card, and they have since changed their business model. And I would look at it as everything you need below the cloud level. Right? How do you make your devices talk? How do you make your devices communicate? What are those connections that are required? So we made that acquisition to facilitate and I know I'm being liberal here, the below the cloud needs of customers. And then we acquired a company called SoftWeb, which really is the above the cloud guys. These are people who are, helping us write interface API type protocols with our customers so that data can be moved as quickly as possible and get into a position where it can be analyzed, where, as I said earlier, those insights can be drawn. So that's our strategy. Our strategy is intensive software capability, intensive partnership with the cloud providers, and then, of course, the full suite of semiconductor and board products that we bring to market with that contingent of individuals as well as ADLINK's board products.
Well, it sounds like quite a value that you could offer to a customer by the insights that they can gain from that. Interesting. One thing that's particularly of interest to me is data privacy. And one thing I'd like to ask, if let's say I have an organization and I want to, get all these insights from all these sensors I have deployed in my factory floor. I look at this, it's a great package. It's a great way to go. Once I begin to offload this data to the cloud and you give me all these analytics from it, do I still own that data? Does that data belong to me still? Do I have the digital rights to that?
It really varies based on the implementation, but I would say by and large, the answer is yes.
Okay, because that would be important, or at least that would be a question to most people.
Of course.
That's fantastic. Well, let me ask you this: what if an organization was interested in going in this direction? What would be their next step? Who would they reach out to? What would they need to explore to be convinced that this is the way they want to go?
Well, they could certainly reach out to me, and we'll make my contact information available, or Jeff Patrick that manages the ADLINK relationship with Avnet. Probably the best way to do it is most customers are probably dealing with Avnet in the local market, and you can absolutely run requests up for data or, to articulate your objectives to our teams in the field. We'll bubble it up very quickly and come back to, that customer entity with at least our thoughts on what the most optimal path to market is. But really, you can access us. Customers can access us any way they'd like.
Oh, that's easy. It seems like an easy way to get started if I were interested. That's great to know. Alex, I can't thank you enough. This has been a very interesting discussion. I've learned a lot. I thought I knew quite a bit about IoT, but just sitting together for these few minutes that we have, I've really gained a great deal of insight. So thank you very much for being with us. I hope we get a chance again to talk about this.
I think it's fantastic. I think the real point to the audience here is that Avnet, and with good partners like ADLINK, are offering our IoT security that's really at the next level, right? We really think we're uniquely positioned, to deliver hardware and software solutions that really hit the heart of what customers need today, and to do it in the most secure fashion, on the planet. And we'd love to talk to customers about our capabilities and ADLINK's portfolio and see what we can't do to help them hit their market objectives.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today on this discussion. I hope you found it as valuable and insightful as I have. We hope you join us for our next podcast, and we'll see you all soon. Thank you.